I welcome you again today. And while we are waiting for Unaji, she has not joined for whatever reason. She had sent me a few questions that she wanted me to answer. But then, if she's not around, I'll just wait for when she's around, we'll talk about it.
Okay,
In the meantime, let us talk about the whatever I had told you that I will discuss and we'll take it from there.
sounds good.
Um, we had thought about talking about the caste system today.
Hmm.
The word caste is not Indian word, so we do not have anything called caste as per se. It has been imposed, and that has been done by the foreign powers, and that's how it's going on. We have a thing which is known as Varna Vyavastha. Now, the word Vyavastha means system or order, and Varn, Varn, Varn. Varn has multiple meanings. The word varn means something that is adaptable, that should be taken on. The varn also means um, justifiable or followable or something that must be there or a norm. So all of these words fit into the word varn. So what we call is there is a varn system order in the Hindu society. I will explain that to you now. And that has been very wrongly called the caste system in the by the Western world. That also I will tell you how it has happened. The Varn Vyavastha, as I told you, that the concept in the typical Indian background was those towns, individual, all independent towns. So let's say if you look at those towns as a larger cities complexes also, it is the same thing. We would call them towns. Now, they were all independent and they were independently ruled, and they were not, never would they attack this or attack that, nothing like that would happen. There could be a possibility that two of them would unite and become one, or 10 of them would unite and become one. That is a possibility. Or they might break and become two again also. And there was also the system of cross marriages. So one would marry into the other and then they would try to join together, and all these things were there. But there were no battles as such. But these small towns, what happens in the town system is this. Let's say a child is born. When a child is born, till the age of 4, the child is at home. We have multiple rituals that are done from the birth right up to the death, even before the birth. We have a ritual that we do as a prayer or whatever you may call it, and I'll explain those things to you in some time from now. Even when the child is conceived and is in the belly, there's a first ritual that is performed. And then when the child is born, and when he's uh, 30 days old, and when the child is 180 days old, and all these things, there are rituals to be done, which go with the thing that when the first teeth start showing in the mouth, and when we feed the child food other than mother's milk, all these things are celebrated. So these things are all done. But when the child is 4 years old, till the child is 4 years old, he is at home. When the child becomes 4 years old, he is supposed to go to a school. Now, typically, the school system, we call them Gurukul. You know Guru. Guru means teacher. Kul means primarily means family. So it is the teacher's family that you go and join in. So from 4 to 6, it is a day school. So the child goes and comes home and goes and comes home. From 6 onwards, all the schools were residential schools. They were like boarding schools. So the child would not come home anymore, and the child would be at the premises of the school only. This was the same for boy child or a female child. It made no difference. There was no differentiation. From 6 onwards, The child is in the school premises, staying in the school, studying in the school. Common education for all children of that age. Doesn't matter what is the social strata or what is the income basis or what, it doesn't make a difference. There was no fees charged by the school. The schools were all sponsored by the governments. There was never a fees system. However,
So so these are in small towns, right?
this is that towns, whatever the town or the kingdom may be called as. Now
So they're not. So
there
the
could be
kids aren't
multiple
really
schools.
going. Sorry, the kids aren't really going that far away in this case,
No,
right?
they are not really going far, or even if they are going very far away, it doesn't make a difference because they are going to stay there.
Right.
And there could be multiple schools in that town or kingdom, whatever you want to call them.
Mm.
Now, this is the Gurukul concept in India. We call it Gurukul. From six onwards, and there were multiple teachers, by the way, it was not one teacher. So, six onwards, till the age of between 8 to 12 is the time, any time, because all kids are different. So, it could be an 8 year for somebody or 10 or 12 for somebody. Till that age, till the age of 12, all children were given the same education, same platform, same background, everything same. By the time the kid was 12 years old, there was a ceremony performed which is called the thread ceremony. The thread ceremony is wearing of a sort of a thread circle that has got three strains in it. There are three threads in it. They are made from cotton, made with raw cotton, and it is worn across the chest like this, across. I'm wearing it still now. I have always worn it all my life. I have never taken it off. It's like this, if you can see it,
Oh, I can see. Yeah.
right? It's like this. Now, a thread ceremony was performed during that time. What happened in the thread ceremony was that the parents were there and the teachers were all there and the kid was there. At that time, it was decided as to what are the aptitudes of the child and what should the child pursue further as education. Just like you have counseling that we do in for modern day, it
Mhm.
was the same system where the teachers and the parents would sit together and they would think and decide that what is the best for this child. And the child was there also, because by that time it was known whether the child is bright in this subject or good in that subject, or is he able to take this better or that. It was already sort of decided. Now, from 12 to 16, also, from the age of 12 to 16, also, while this was decided, the child or the parents, they still had the opportunity to change if they wanted to. That yes, we decided that we want to go with the mathematics, but my child is good in arts, I will take it back and put him into arts. That was still there, open from 12 to 16. However, specialization courses started at the age of 12. At 16, then very serious specialized courses started. This was all done in residential schools, and certain courses were in this part of the town, certain in that part of the town, certain in other part. So the kids would move to that place and they would live there. So that is how it was performed. All of these are called gurukuls. All of these are called gurukuls. Primarily, they would break the education, I would say, into four different groups primarily, and then there will be multiple groups in that. Let's say that I want to study sciences. So that is one group. But that when I go to that university or college to study sciences, I could pick up maths as my subject. I could also pick up physics as my subject. Or I could take biologies, or I might take entomologies. So they were all different branches, but grouped into one heading called the sciences. So there were four basic divisions that were made at that time, and they were all four different types of universities where the students were sent. They were still called gurukuls because that was the name, and The head of this organizations usually also were rishis, which means that they were very knowledgeable type of people, and their teachers also were like that. They were also very knowledgeable and selected as such. I will now tell you what these four streams were. We have four names for them. The first one would be named as the Shudras, Shudra, Shudras. The second one would be named as Vaishyas, Vayshy, so Vaishyas. The third one will be Kshatriyas, so Kshatriya, Kshatriya. And the last one would be Brahmins, Brahmin. These were the streams they were divided in. What they meant was the Shudras were primarily those who wanted to do any jobs or any services, or would join somebody to take up a job, or would work in the service industry,
Like a laborer.
or even a private business of service industry. If I want to come and clean your house, it's a service industry.
So is
So
that all merchants fall into that class? People
no,
that
all
no.
those who wanted to do service or wanted to do jobs.
Hmm.
The second one, which is Vaishyas, were all business class.
This is the merchants. Okay.
Yeah, everybody who wanted to business, even the agriculture was treated as business, and all people who were traders or business class people, manufacturers, they are all in that second section. So they were given education in all those streams to follow. The third one, the Kshatriyas, were those people who would get into armies, policing, army, anything like that. They were the Kshatriyas. And finally, the Brahmins were the people who would go into anything that is like education, or or something like becoming a doctor, or becoming a priest, or anything like, or ministers, or the who would like to pursue further and become rishis or whatever they are. So that was the fourth. These are
So
the streams that were followed.
so all the people teaching and the rishis that are leading these schools are they would have all gone through
Gone
the
into a Brahmin school.
Brahmin, right?
They
Okay.
would have gone into a Brahmin school.
Okay.
Now, when the thread ceremony is done, that is when we take, the ceremony says that we take the three vows. That is where there are three threads in the whole thread, in the whole thing. Group of three threads. We take three vows. The first vow we take is that we will always be good and follow and be honest to the stream of education that my gurus are giving to me. And I will perform my duty as per I have been educated, taught, trained. The second one is that I will always be true, good, and faithful to my parents and my parentage and my families.
Your parents and your family, like meaning your children.
That no, that means is that if my father has, whatever my father has done good to me, I will carry on and do the same good to my children, or I will keep the tradition on, which means also the traditions of the whole system. So if the families are having Christmases or they are having this holidays, I will keep the traditions on.
The good ones.
And the third one says that I will be honest and I will always be faithful to the country that feeds me, educates me, and I am a citizen of. That would also include in large that I'll be faithful to the laws of the God, because the God has made certain rules and laws in the world, in the nature, and I will always be faithful to them.
So the idea of country and citizenship has to be somewhat of a stretch, right? Like those things didn't exist in the sense that they do now.
No, they were all citizens of a certain town or country or whatever you may call them.
So it's really just referring to those that are close to you, right?
That means that you're part of parcel of a society, of a big system, of a big place. There could be thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people living in that.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking, where do you get to the lines? Does it stop or is it everything?
Now, what does that mean?
The it's a citizen and country, and you're saying it could be the town of
Correct.
100, right? So at what point does it not just include everybody? Like the entire world is my
Well,
country
in
or
the third
something.
one, when I said I'll be true to the God and the whole system includes the whole world also.
Yeah. Okay.
You see, we look at it this way that look at it like a circle. That I have a circle of very close influence, which is my family, my wife, my children, my parents, whoever they are. That's my close circle.
Mhm.
So when I'm good to this close circle and I'm a good guy and I'm a very good person, honest, and everything is good, the next circle already, which is my friends or my colleagues or my people I know, already is influenced in the same way and I'm good to them also. I'm a good guy, I'm a good performer in office, I'm a good guy to the colleagues, I'm a good guy to my business, to my profession, whatever it is. And then expand the circle. That means I'm a good citizen of the whole country or the city.
Right.
And if that is there, then I'm a good person in the whole world because you expand it further and then the whole world is influenced. I'm a nice guy.
Right.
It's the same way as I told you that there are no rights, it's all duties.
Hmm.
So it's the same system. If I'm following, if I'm being good, I'm being good everywhere.
Right.
So, but then the thing is this that the thread ceremony sort of kept the thread close to our heart to tell us and remind us that these are your duties all your life. So follow these duties and do according to these duties. This was the commitment that the child made when he chose and selected a certain path in his life. It was the same for men, it was the same for women. Now, when I told you these four things, typically, anybody doing any of these four courses would get a name or a last name according to the course or study. We never had last names that were followed by the parentage. The man person would have a name, I would have a first name, but there was never a last name. This is when the person got a last name. When he went into the university, colleges of specialization, they got the last name. The four last names that were associated were anybody who was doing the service jobs or the Shudra jobs could use a name DAS or Das. Das word literally means that I am a serviceman of service to you. So that's what the word Das means literally. The second group, which was the business group, anybody in the Vaishya business group could use the name of Gupta or Gupt or Gupta. You might have seen many people in Indian people whose names are Guptas.
Hmm. And DOS, really.
And Das also, yes. Anybody who was number three group, the soldiers or the army or whatever, those people, anybody could use the name of Verma, Verma, Verma. And then anyone who was from the Brahmin group, they could use the name of Sharma, Sharma, Sharma.
That's another common one that I see a lot.
This is how they got their names. And they followed their names according to what professions they had. In these names, there could be many further classifications and many further names. I don't want to keep my name just as Sharma, but I might like to keep something else which is more to my profession, which my profession is a specialization in this education. So I would call myself this. If I'm only a teacher, I might call myself an acharya or an upadhyay or whatever it is, which means literally means teacher. So I might like to use that name. That is allowed. Nobody tells you don't use it. So, based on the profession or based on my stream of training and education, the names were decided. The last names were decided. Which brings me to this, that the son of my kids may not have my last name because they would decide according to their profession and system. Somewhere in the Gita, which you have probably read, in the second chapter, uh, Krishna tells Arjuna that what is your swadharma? He uses the term swadharma. Swadharma means what is your own obligation towards yourself. That means what are you educated, trained, and what is your profession?
Right. That's where he's saying you're supposed to your nature is to be a warrior, so it's
Yeah,
not
if you are trained and your nature and your education is to be a warrior, then that is what you're supposed to perform.
right.
That is exactly the concept, that this becomes your swadharma, whatever you have chosen. Because at the age of 12, you've selected something, you've taken education, you've taken training, and you've taken a profession. You got to be true to it, you got to be honest to it.
Hmm.
So, this is the concept. Now, with this concept, what happened was, let's say I'm traveling and I'm from a different uh, country system or town system, and I'm going to a different one right now. The moment I would go to that town, if I'm looking for somebody who does business in only gold and gold jewelry, I would ask anybody where would I find a bonik, or where would I find a so and so, and immediately they will tell me, oh, there are three baniks here and two one there, and that was it is. So
Right.
that's how the last name denoted easily to find a person.
Your
Or if
function
I
in
want to,
society.
if I'm looking for a doctor, that where would I find a Sharmaji who's a doctor?
Hmm.
Or in this stream, particularly child specialist or whatever, and they'll tell me, yeah, you find that one on that side.
Hmm.
It was very easy, and it was easy to document and locate people. That is how the last names were used, and this is the Varna system.
It's
This is the
interesting. It's actually similar to what they did in like old Anglo-Saxon culture. So like my last name is Smith, which kind of just means like a general tradesman.
correct.
But at one point, I would have been a specific, like a blacksmith or a
Yes,
tinsmith. It's the
that's
same thing.
absolutely
Yeah,
correct. Absolutely, this is the same system.
yeah.
So now, what happened is that we in India, if I would call it this way, uh, we have been invaded and ruled by foreign powers for more than 1,000 years. There were the Islamic rulers who had come over and they had invaded and done a lot of harm to us and broken the temples, burnt the libraries, killed so many, and all of these things were done, conversions and everything. However, what happened with that was that the town system or the country system started breaking, and also with that the education system started breaking. That was purposely hit at, and people were sort of converted or killed or whatever you can see there. And there were a lot of resistance, and there was more war, and there were always discontent and disturbances in the society. So that's what started happening. That is how the system started breaking. And the Mughals would try to find certain trades, particularly priests or particularly teachers who taught Vedic values, and they would start butchering those people so that this education was not furthered. And that is how the last names started being hidden, that I don't want to use my last name, otherwise I'll be killed. So this has started happening, and that sort of started disturbing the society. And somewhere around 1700, 1750, 1756, the Britishers came over and they started taking over parts and bits of the country. For a Britisher, it was very, very difficult to understand that how can a so and so Gupta have a son whose name is so and so Sharma.
Hmm.
They could not understand. So they passed a law that every person must follow the one last name and they cannot change their last names.
Hmm.
This became the caste system. If you know anybody who's a Guyanese or a Jamaican Hindu from islands, from Jamaica or from Trinidad, Tobago, any of these places, and he's a Hindu, you can talk to them. They will tell you exactly this, that when they were brought on ships and they were placed in the places, they were given a last name as it suited the Britishers, that you are Persod and you are so and so. And they did not allow the children to change their last names at all. And then what happened next was everything else, which means that they started putting a divide and a rule principle. So they started dividing that these
Hmm.
people are bad, these are good, they are untouchables, these are high society, these are not. This started happening.
Hmm.
And you start rewarding people and you start punishing people and you start taking sides, um, giving somebody more benefits, taking away from. So this is what started happening all over, and that sort of created the what is called the caste system, that is now very heavily prevalent and being followed. Though not everybody follows, but it is being followed. My
It's an interesting sort of thought because what I guess kind of happened is the we have you had one way of organizing society, which is we label people by their function. This allows us to work across different organizations, different townships. This is how we structure and organize society. That's our priority. And then the British, who at one point had the same priority, right? Like they used to use this same naming technique where you're getting named based on your function. It wasn't as perhaps structured, but you still took a last name based on your function. And then when you when you force change the means of organizing, which is the British coming in and saying you're now going to do this with your last name structure, you're switching what the emphasis or what the benefit you're getting from naming is. It's like now we're saying it's more important that we can track heredity than it is to be able to track function. And it's like that sort of abrupt shift without the rest of the culture changing gradually, I could just see being, disastrous, really. It's like just so much happening all together.
You see, it is one thing to follow the same sort of a system of last names in your society, but it is another thing that the society that you rule and govern upon and you want to control, then you don't want them to follow the same thing, because it is confusing for you to understand, as though they are not the same names as yours. They mean the same thing, they may not have the same meaning.
What, one sec. Yes. Yeah, go for it. Sorry, I've got my son home here with me today. He's homesick from school, so
That's okay. That's okay. So for the see, when you have to govern a whole country, you need to lay out that how do I want to govern. I don't want to get confused. I don't want to get things into this name, that name. It should be one, and that's what it should be. If I know you, if I arrest your father, I know this is the son.
right.
That's how it should be. So that's how it was imposed upon.
Yeah, there's some arrogance in that too, in that it's not just like we're doing it because it's easier. It's like we think our way's better. Uh,
Another thing that happened was that somewhere around 1800, they decided that all the gurukuls or all the schools that are being going on should be shut down. We don't want the education system to be there in India. We want to have our own English education system, which was primarily Christian education system. So they started punishing, killing, beheading all those who were running the schools. From there, what happened is this: that they wanted to, which is very strongly now part of the Indian society, that the culture should be killed. You should be told that you are inferior quality, you are supposed to be ruled. We are the only people who are teaching you everything that is decent. Whatever you've learnt is all a jungle law, and you should forget everything.
Right.
So imperialism primarily, and this was what given was given to us. My mother tells me that my grandfathers grandfathers ran gurukuls, and they were hung from the trees for running gurukuls.
Wow.
This is when the family changed their professions
Hmm.
to do something else instead of running a gurukul.
Hmm.
And this is what my mother told me, which means till that time these things were there, and this is how we were forced to get out of it. Now, even today, even now, when somebody asks me that what is your name, I tell him it's Sharma. He says, yeah, Sharma, I can understand, you are a Brahmin, but what is the real family last name? So I might have another family last name which my family followed other than Sharma,
Right.
or it may not be. So my family last name is actually Tugnath. So if I tell somebody that I am a Tugnath, oh, okay. The moment you tell Tugnath, they will know what part of the country you originally come from
Right.
immediately. And typically, what would have been your profession?
Right.
That is how the society was. And even now, with those last names, we can relate and we can tell that this is how it was. So, this is what has today become the caste system. And more than that, it is all appeasement to become what you say, vote banks. They have become vote banks. So create a divide, make the caste that okay, you are from the Das community or the service community, let us break it into 20 other small castes.
Right.
And then this caste will be given this much benefit, that caste this much. So you create your vote banks,
Yeah.
just like it's happening in Canada.
It
So
all over. It's a
yeah,
very common problem.
it's
You know.
all over world. It's all over world. So this is the demon of democracy.
Hmm.
Now, vote banks is appeasement, and vote banks is giving somebody something, taking out of somebody else's pocket.
Right.
So that is what happens, and this is what led to the whole caste system and everything else. So that is primarily the caste system and the way we look at it, really.
Right.
And that's how it should be, but that is what has become of it. Caste system. Another thing that comes to my mind is that there was something called the ashram. Ashram is also a place where you go as a teacher is there and you go and study with them or stay with them.
I know
But
this
there's
word.
another usage of the word ashram. That means that in what state of life are you in and what activity are you performing in that state. So your life's own ashram. And this was also divided in four parts. The first one was called the brahmacharya, which means that you're a student and your job is to gain knowledge. The word brahmacharya means acharan as per Brahma, which means that you are doing your life's all everything you're following in life according to the laws laid out by the creator or the knowledged one. So your job is to gain knowledge, get education, and that is your first ashram is brahmacharya ashram. The second one is called the grihast ashram, which would typically begin when a person is 25 years of age. From the age 0 to 25, you are in the first ashram, which is the student life or brahmacharya ashram. 24 to 25, typically, for men and women, is when you start getting into the next one, which is the grihast, which is the family way of life. Now you can have a family, you can have a wife, and you can have your own profession, your own business, your own job, do what you want to do. Amass as much as wealth as you can, get rich, make money. There's nothing wrong in it. Do your job properly, do your karma properly, raise children. Next one was at the age around 50, 50 or 60. So around 50 to 60, the third one started, which was called the Vanprasth. Vanprasth means that if you're doing some businesses, if you're doing some activities, leave it to your children or leave it to the next whoever wants to take it over from you. Or if you're in services, take it easy and denote time to training, education, educating the society. Offer your services free to people who need so that you can train them. So you're more as a social person, social worker, and not so much as a family man anymore. Also, 50 to 60 is the age prescribed to denounce any sexual activities further. That it's not your time anymore to do those things. Take your mind away from it totally so that your mind works healthily somewhere else. And the last one, which was from 50 or rather say 70, 75 onwards, 200 or whatever age it is called the sannyas. Sannyas typically means that you have now totally denounced the society and you are doing nothing for yourself anymore. Everything you do is for the good of society. So you do everything for the good of society only. That is sannyas. Or you may denounce and go and seek God or do prayers or do what you wish to do. So that was the last state that, okay, now you concentrate on meditate or whatever you want to do, or become a teacher or become a muni or rishi or whatever you like to.
Mhm.
So that was the final stage. So this was the fabric of the society. While we have the Varn system, which gives you the education, background, profession, we had this ashram system where this is what you're supposed to do for so many years. And then you should denounce it. That's how the whole thing was made. It is not that every human being's purpose was to get salvations or to seek God or whatever it is. That's not there. If your aptitude and your desire is that I only want to do research and science and studies, do that. There is nothing wrong in it. So it was not prescribed that everybody must aim that I must go into salvation. And that's not the purpose. It all depends upon the aptitude of the person, interest of the persons.
Mhm.
That's how it was made. And then the diktat or the rule here had four words that we follow in doing all of this. Those four words are dharm, arth, kam, moksha. Dharm, arth, kam, moksha.
You spell that?
Dharm, sorry,
Could you spell it for me?
dharm is dharma, dharma.
Yep.
Arth is arth. Kam would be kam or kaam. And moksha would be moksha, moksha. Dharma, doing things righteously. Everything you do in your life should be done righteously. Everything should be done as per the laws of the nature, as per the laws of the God, as per laid out by the morals of the society or the whole world or the universe. Artha means wealth. It could be liquid, it could be cash, it could be properties, it could be anything. It's wealth. But that wealth must be gained as per the dharma.
Right.
So
Righteous profits.
dharma is first. It has to be followed, number one priority. Number two is artha. I'm getting my money, I'm getting my property, but it should be gained as per my morals of the dharma.
We got those two reversed right now a little too often, I think.
The third one, calm, means desires. I have the right to have desires, and the desires should all be ruled by the dharma. I cannot have desires that are not righteous. Now, desires can be anything, which means I might have a desire really to be a rich man, or I might have a desire that I want to leave behind a scientific principle for the society. I might have a desire that I don't want any of it and I only want to seek God. Every desire is okay as long as it is supported by dharma and it is not non dharmic. So, third one, calm, means desires. And the final one, moksha, means salvation. Now, all these things, if you look at it, the varna or the ashram or these four I have told you, this is how the fabric of society was built and made, and this is what the Hinduism stands on.
It's interesting. There's so much parallel to what we do already. Um, this idea of like, if you go through high school now in Ontario, at least, you'll do like an aptitude test of some sort where we attempt to sort and put push people into pursuits that fit them, but also that give us like a decent spread of skills in the world, right? Like not everybody can go off and uh, be do spiritual exploration their entire life. Like there's value in all of the four levels.
That's correct.
I thought it was interesting though, like I think the first one, Shudra, the sort of labor service jobs. I know labor is probably not the right word.
No, even labor is
You
part of
you
it.
you you said that being a doctor was to be in the, let's call it the fourth one, the Brahmin class,
Correct.
not class, Brahmin level. I would have looked at it. I would have assumed that doctors were in the service class. Like
They
you,
are,
we,
they are in
personally look at them like
service.
that,
They are in service, but they are in service because they are very highly educated.
right?
So when you become highly educated, you are in the Brahmin class.
So there is an element of, oh, this is a takes an additional amount of time before I can actually practice.
So while those are in service could get off the education system between 18 and 20 and start profession,
Right.
the Brahmins could not get off the education till 24 or 25.
I see.
Of course, the service classes could go into specialty courses and still do it till 24 or 25 if they wanted to.
Right.
But that was the typical way of looking at it.
Right.
So, because you have spent so much time in education, Brahmin is always supposed to spend time in education because that's your aptitude.
Right.
That's how the whole fabric of the society was. I believe very firmly, and I don't have any documentations, but I believe very firmly that the Hindu beliefs are what were the beliefs of the whole universe or the world that was there at that time till 3 to 4,000 years back. Then the societies started forming their own ways and systems of understanding. Like if you look at the pagan religion that was there in the Middle East and all those things, and whatever the Greeks followed or whatever the Chinese followed, and they're all offshoots of the same things that the Hindu belief had, and they have
Oh,
all come in
there's so
different
much of that.
ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have come in different ways, different things, and then what has happened is that the control system makes the people to put checks and controls that I want to control the society.
Hmm.
So then they start putting the things on top that you have to follow me, you have to follow this book, you have to follow this man, you have to
Hmm.
follow what we tell you, you can't do this, you cannot do that. So it's all a control freak thing. And that's what has happened in most of the things we call religion today, are all control freaks. And this is what the problem is.
This is the duty versus rights thing all over
That's right.
again. It's easier to give people certain rights and say this, and we're going to enforce it across the board, than it is to instill a sense of duty in people so that things just work harmoniously. We essentially said we're not going to be able to do that. Like
That's right.
that's the approach. We're not going to be able to rely on everybody doing this for the right reasons, and so we are going to force it down. And I think so much of what we're seeing is exactly what you talked about, which is Arth over Dharma.
Yes.
And
Or calm over dharma,
yeah, and
even
yeah,
desire over dharma.
right.
It's the same
uh,
thing.
yeah, and there's a huge blend between desire and wealth too. Like, we've blended those two stages so closely together at sometimes. I'm not sure people can even separate the two. um
Yes, you see,
uh,
if the education is there from the childhood, then these things don't happen. The
mhm.
society doesn't get disturbed.
Yeah,
Also, look at it this way, that the moment when I told you about a circle, let's call it the circle of influence, when I told you
I
about a
drew my
close,
picture. Oh
or
no, I can't see it.
I'm sorry,
I
yes,
drew a
that's right.
picture.
Yes, you made a picture diagram of it. Very nice. You know, one disturbance in the circle. If I'm a man who is not righteous, who's not good to the family, to my close people, I'm a cheat, I'm a bad guy, I don't do my job properly, it starts influencing the next level and the next level and the
For
next
sure.
level.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing, like just the righteousness influences all of it. The wrongness, wrong thing also, non dharma also influences everybody.
Yeah.
So this is what happens in a society, and that starts disturbing, creating bad and everything.
Right.
In the Gita also you will read it, that in the societies that were formed, the punishment system was very strong. That if a person, we call them different names, we would call them asuras or we'll call them whatever names, that if a person does a wrong, he must be punished. In the society, the examples have to be set.
Right.
And if you tolerate it, it becomes a disease
Mhm.
because more and more people start doing wrong things and it becomes a disease.
Yeah.
So while your duty is there, you don't have a right to do wrongs. So you don't have a right that I'm doing wrong, but I still have a human right and you cannot punish me. That does not happen.
Right.
So punishment was a very big part of the whole society. The kings, or let us call it the people who were running the country or the town or whatever it is, they had a board which was usually made up of the Brahmins who were highly educated. And those were the guys who would advise the king or suggest or become a board or a ministers that would decide what and how and everything else. And even the kings or even the ministers were punishable when they did anything wrong. So nobody was above the law or nobody was above the moral.
Hmm.
So this is how the fabric worked. Also, the ism is all added to us later on, and there is no Hinduism as so to say. We call it the Hindu Dharma or the Sanatan Dharma.
Oh,
The word Sanatan means something that has always been there and that will always be there. That is the meaning of the word Sanatan. Because it's a way of thing, that universe thing that has always been there.
yeah.
So that's why we say it's Sanatan Dharma. That's how we call it Sanatan Dharma. So there is no word ism into it. And everything else that has come out of it, like if you look at the Buddha thing, or again Jainism or Sikhism, or whatever you look at it, it is all have been offshoots and come out from the Hindu religion,
Hmm.
because everything has taken this part from here and that part from here. A typical example will be Buddha, because if you look at the life of Buddha, he was a prince,
Right.
and he was one of those who had everything to his service, and he was not a very highly educated man as per being a Brahmin. He was a kshatriya, he was a king, but he was not a Brahmin, so he was not educated as so much to priest or teach people. But you know what, suddenly he thought that I want to leave everything and I want to get into the art of meditation and seeking God.
Hmm.
So he spent a lot of his life trying to practice meditation just to seek inner peace and God. That is what he did. But nothing else was there in his theory that he had to propagate or tell to people so that people should follow.
Right.
Most of the things that have after come out is are by those people who became his disciples, who were none of them were the real medicants or meditators or whatever.
Right.
But they started ruling it as okay, this is what the guru told us, let us follow this, and then let's add into it and add into it and add into it. That's how it has become. So I think every one of the religions that are today are just the same way, that they've been
There's
adding
so
into it. And
many there's so many through lines. Like when I'm reading this stuff now, where you could just draw a straight line from this passage right into, a typical description of like the biblical version of heaven, or like there is just so much overlap, that I can't imagine that they arrived at this independently. There's definitely they've carried it through. The in modern terms, they've rebranded it a couple of times,
that's right.
but I think one of the reasons for that is, like you had said at the very start, it's such a dense collection of materials. Those Vedic readings that have, I think you said seven meanings to every mantra or something like this. Because there's so many, it's so wide open for interpretation, it allows itself to be adapted to so many different things.
Yeah,
And I think some of that is people just took a little piece. A lot of the times what I've noticed is I'll read something, I'll be like, oh, that sounds like it could come out of the Bible. But then, a couple sentences later, there's a piece that says, oh, it's different. It's not the same. But if I were to say I want to start a new religion now, I could just ignore the second sentence that
yes,
contextualizes.
correct.
And I suspect that you're getting some of the message. Part of it is just, look, it is flexible. That's why it's been around for so long. You know what I mean? Um, but yeah, I certainly see that all over the place. I see references to not just Christianity, but like Greek philosophy and stuff like that. But if similar concepts, and it's interesting. Yeah. The other
But then
thing that I thought was
there
no, go
has
ahead.
to be a source which is a mother to everything.
Right,
So that's how it is. That's how we look at it. So the source of everything or mother of everything has to be Vedas, because they are God's words that are spread all over the universe.
right,
And anybody righteously in his mind also wants to meditate and get some knowledge, taps the same source and gets the knowledge.
right.
So it's the same thing, and that's how we believe in it. There is no concept of heaven or hell in our belief.
Hmm.
Heaven is on this earth and hell is on this earth.
Right,
When you're born into a lousy life and you're in that society or in that community, or you're having the dirtiest part of the world, or war ridden places, or disease ridden places, you are living in a hell.
right.
And the same thing, look at the people who are in good life, they are living in heavens. So heaven and hell is the same thing. When you
Hmm.
take birth again, you go into a heaven or go into hell. And
Right.
everything depends upon your karmas.
And on top of that, you can talk to somebody that's living in what we would describe as upper class luxurious living, and be living in some version of hell. Like, not all of those people that have all that access are super happy. You know what I mean? And you can talk to somebody else who's not as privileged or luxury, and they're not living in such a hell because they're and I suspect a good chunk of this has to do with the source from which they've lived their lives. So if you go after Arth without doing it through
Dharma.
Dharma, then you're going to end up in some version of hell on earth. Whereas if you don't get as much wealth, but you've done it through Dharma, you're probably going to be much closer to living in much more harmonious life. And if we're going to say heaven on earth, like you can, you can't ignore the fact that you see all of these people that seem to have achieved so much, and it will just tell you that they're so miserable. And personally, I've just found it, the more money I get has zero effect on my inner state and my happiness, beyond
In
beyond comfort, as long as I can eat. um
somewhere in Gita, Krishna says that those people who perform good karma and have been constantly performing good karma, I reward them in their left next lives. And when I reward them in the next lives, they get plenty of whatever I'm rewarding them with. Most of these people who get plenty of whatever I'm rewarding them with in the next lives waste it.
right,
They use it for self interest, they don't distribute it, so they don't gain anything. They do not do anything that should be done according to other than self desire for any other purpose. So, what happens? That most of these people who have been given the plentiful will waste it or use it for self consumption only,
right,
not even thinking about that my neighbor is sleeping hungry while I'm feeding myself overly. So, they don't even have that thought. So, they will waste it in their lifehood and go back to the same state in the next karma birth because now
right,
their karmas are all bad.
right. The temptation is too great, and they ignore the need to be righteous.
This we see all our lives, all everywhere we see the same thing. We see
Oh
it
yeah,
happening all the time.
I think a good chunk of it comes down to people get to that level and they attribute too much of it to themselves, and too not enough of it to life. Like there's some element where it's like, there were so many things that had to line up for you to get here, to think like, oh, I did this all myself, and not acknowledge the interconnectivity of everybody, and that so much of this is built on the fact that so many other people are here, is just you can
No,
watch that
the principle is that how do I, when Krishna says I, he says, how do I distribute to humanity all over the world? If I give you 10 apples, you cannot have all the 10 apples. You might have two.
right,
And then why have I given you eight more? So that you can distribute to other people who don't have it.
right,
How do I spread it around? This is how I spread around. I spread it through you.
right,
How do I spread knowledge? I spread knowledge through knowledgeable people. How do I spread anything? How do I spread education? It is through people who are educated. So this is the way I work. So when I give you plentiful of something, I'm giving you so that you can give away to those people who don't have it.
right,
I'm not giving it to you so that you burn it and consume it or overconsume it and keep it to yourself and die. That's not what I've given it you for. So if you don't do what I'm asking you to do, your karmas are already bad. And
mhm.
why should I give it to you next time? This is how he puts it very straight.
Yeah, they look at it like they weren't given anything, and that it was all through dharma which they achieved the wealth. But certainly that's a delusion in many cases.
If I'm born into a family that is millionaires, what have I done to get born in that family?
I I
What have I
agree.
done?
I
Nothing.
agree. I agree.
But yet I'm so proud of it and I'm all the time carrying that air in me and I'm attitude is bad and I'm rude. See, I have done something in the previous lives, so I've been born into a thing. I've been given plentiful. It's not nothing that I have done for myself that I should be taking it in this life.
Right.
People don't understand this. They don't understand this. In yoga, in Yoga Darshana, there are 32 things. One thing called Siddhi. Siddhi means you achieve a power. And there are 32 different types of power explained in Yoga Darshana that a person can achieve if you are following the yogas properly. In those siddhis or the powers, there are also powers where uh, you can reduce your body to a size of a fly, or you can expand your body and it can look like mountain. Those powers are there that you can achieve. There are also powers where you can look back into what your previous lives were. And I always tell and talk in my talks that I do usually. I tell people that it is very easy to control where you want to go in your next life. You can do it. But this is a siddhi that has been given in Yoga Darshana. So if a person concentrates, meditates, and knows what I have done in my previous lives, he will know why I have been given this life. And he can always control and govern where am I going to go in my next life. It is there's no rocket science. It's
Right.
simple. Well, we've spoken a lot of things today.
That was
You might
that
have
was a good
times of
one. That was a good one today.
I think okay.
So I've
You
got my
probably
homework. I will try to
yes.
do that this week.
Try to go into some temples, see how
I
it
will.
looks.
I
And
will.
you will have questions in your mind and come back to it.
I will.
And from today, whatever I have told you, if you have questions, do not hesitate.
I won't.
Ask me.
So are we good for next Friday or
Sure, we'll meet next Friday.
okay, sounds great.
Yeah, my laser thing has to go on for at least two more times. So I don't know what dates they're going to give me. I still
This
don't know.
is I'm 100% flexible. You just let me know whatever
Yes,
works
I
for
will.
you.
I will let you know. But let's keep it for Friday for now.
Sounds good.
For next Friday.
Bye.
Okay, Daniel. Goodbye. Thank you.